Friday, and it's Liner and Gary, and this is Under Our Skin. So we've done cartoons last week. This week we are going to take a different avenue in our lives. So this is from the age of 7 till 11. So I'm going to start with a story that sits in my mind from when I was 7 years old, and it was the time that I went swimming, and I was learning how to swim for about 6 months, and this time my mum and dad took me to the swimming pool, and there was my brother and my sister. My other brother wasn't born yet, so that would be Robert, so he would be another year away. And while at the swimming pool, my mum and dad were like looking after the other two, and I decided to jump into the pool. Not a clever move really, because I didn't have anything to keep me up, so I sank to the bottom. The next thing I remember was coughing and bringing up water, laying on the side of the swimming pool. But that's youth, isn't it? So the dangers of my youth. So I think that's my recollection really of when I was 7. There are other incidences in my life when I've had accidents, and the reason I mention it is about 3 weeks after I jumped into the pool, being a He-Man or a Tarzan or something like that. They pulled a body out of the swimming pool at Crawley because there was, at the time, there was like these large black pucks that used to be thrown into the swimming pool and sink to the bottom, and the youngsters used to dive in. Anyway, one of these pucks was round, and it got thrown in around 9 foot, and as the swimming pool was sloping, it gradually started rolling underneath the water down on the base of the pool, down into the 12-foot 6. And one of the young guys decided he was going to go and get it, but he didn't come back, so God rest his soul. That was a long time ago. Death at a swimming pool.
That gives me an opportunity to come in here because I have a body story too.
Oh
yes. I'll start with my father's next duty station, which was from Guam, was Larson Air Force Base, Washington, which is located in the southeast corner of the state. Larson was similar to Beale, old World War II training base, later an ICBM Titan missile base, and when we were there, it was a SAC bomber tanker base. Only it's closed now, or actually turned over to the city of Moses Lake, where it was located. The only notable thing about the base was it was near the Hanford nuclear facility on the Columbia River. Hanford is rather infamous as being one of the world's largest nuclear waste pollution sites. They've been trying to clean it up for many years.
So all the nuclear waste is stored at that base?
Well, Hanford had 7 reactors, which is a lot. They were making plutonium for nuclear bombs.
Okay.
And what do you do? The problem with every nuclear facility is, what do you do with the waste? Because there's all this leftover waste from producing either nuclear power, nuclear weapons, whatever. Usually it's stored on site in ponds, or it's stored underground in tanks, that sort of thing, because they don't know what to do with it. Where do you, nobody wants nuclear waste, right?
No.
So it was stored on site, I believe in underground tanks, and it leaked. And it's leaked into the ground, into the groundwater. It's a big mess. Needless to say, the place is closed. I don't know what exactly they're doing to clean it up. I believe they have a program where they're trying to ship all nuclear waste to one location in the state of Nevada. Sad for Nevada, but
yeah, really sad. I was reading an article in the Philippines, GMA I think it was, and they were talking about the Philippines going to nuclear electricity and building these plants that will generate power for the public. But I wonder if the public really know how much contamination is involved in producing electricity.
well, it isn't necessarily contamination until it leaks, right? I mean, it's just stored waste. Where it's stored and how much waste is a question, and of course it becomes contamination when it leaks into the ground or into the water or something.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, if they were going to build a nuclear power plant, what you do with the waste is a big problem.
Yeah. Maybe they can turn around and put the waste on the Spratly Islands. Only as a joke, really, guys. Don't take me seriously.
Welcome to the Chinese. Huh? That's a good idea, really.
Yeah. I would turn around and stop them taking over more of the Philippines.
But anyways, yeah, we don't want to get back into cartoons. I will briefly mention we got a buddy coming to visit us.
Hey, goatee, stop eating my bag. There we go.
Anyways, I will briefly mention that I was continuing to watch cartoons because there was more and more of them. The Flintstones. Remember the Flintstones?
There we go.
Fred Flintstone. Yabba Dabba Doo.
Yabba Dabba Doo. It's the Flintstones. It's the Flintstones. There we go.
And his neighbor Barney.
Barney
Rubble.
Wilma.
Yes, Wilma the wife.
Yeah.
Did you know the Flintstones were copied from the Jackie Gleason Honeymooners show back in the late 50s?
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was an exact copy of the... In fact, Jackie Gleason was going to sue Hanna-Barbera for copying his show, but then he backed off when the Flintstones became a big hit.
Yeah, and they paid him a few $million.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. Compensation.
Yeah. I love the Flintstones for the car. Remember the car?
Oh, the one...
The car had no engine. You had to run in place. Remember their feet would go... And they would run in place, and that would get the car going.
Oh, no brakes for coming downhill.
Oh, your feet were the brakes, right? You had to put your feet down to stop the car.
Oh, how we've developed life with cars and automobiles.
And Dino the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Dino the dog. Yeah.
Oh.
But anyway, moving on. I remember two things. I call it the beach ball incident.
Okay.
My dead body, which was, we used to go swimming at the nearby lake, Moses Lake. And one day we were there, and I was wading out into the water, and off in the distance, maybe 50, 75 yards, I thought I saw what was a beach ball. And it was round something sticking out of the water. And so I started swimming towards it, moving towards it. And I got close and realized suddenly that it's a dead guy. It's a dead body.
Oh my God.
Laying on its back, and the guy's a fat guy, big fat guy, and that's his stomach sticking up out of the water. Needless to say, I immediately turned around and came back. They called the police.
Without the beach ball?
Without the beach ball.
Oh.
The big fat guy. And one other thing I remember is one day in school, they announced over the PA system in elementary school. They said, hey, everybody's going down to the flight line to welcome President John Kennedy. And we're all excited. We're going to see the president. So they did. They bussed us all down to the base flight line, and we all lined up outside a barrier. And President John Kennedy got off his plane, Air Force One, went around shaking hands with all the generals and waved to us. We were cheering, and then he disappeared into his limousine. And why he was there, what it was all about, I have no idea. But the one and only time I've ever seen live a politician like John Kennedy.
An instrumental guy that changed a lot in the world and started a lot of things happening within the world, but a life taken short very quickly, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed. The conspiracy is who took it.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I've at my time, at my youth of when I was 7 and 8 and 9, I was very, very accident prone, and I used to have my first crush, which was next door. It was a young lady called Karen, and I thought the sun shined out of her arse, put it that way, because she was so nice and so pleasant, and I used to spend more time with her. Anyway, one day I was in a rush to get round to see her, that I thought I'd take a shortcut across the fence in the garden, and it was only a small fence. It was a couple of pieces of wire about a foot up, and I jumped over the wire, but one of my feet didn't make it, caught on the wire, and I inadvertently did a face plant into a steel plate, a drainage cover on the floor, and broke my nose and smashed my teeth. So inadvertently running for a woman. It wouldn't be the first time that I'd had an accident chasing after a woman. There we go. So more of that later, shall we say.
Yeah.
So that was my first trip to the hospital to have my nose sorted out, but my nose is still bent, and it will be bent for the rest of my life because the damage was done at such an early age that it's made the bones grow in that curve rather than being straightened up. So accidents when I was younger, but my father and my mother, they've worked really, really, really hard to bring up the family, but the family just kept getting bigger and bigger, and as I've mentioned, Robert will come along next year, so we went from 1 to 2, then there was a gap, then it was 3, my sister, then there was a 2-year gap, and then there was Robert. So life in Crawley. And it's the first time I started to get involved in music, and I used to like a song by Peter and Gordon. I can't remember the name of it. It was really, really big in America. It only got to number 60 in the UK, but it was used as an advert for DAVAO washing powder.
What was that? I can't live in a world without love.
I think that's the one. Yeah, I can't live in the world without love. And it was all about. I didn't realise there was a pop chart, but I found it very, very. I used to sing along to it, and my mum used to get absolutely livid with me going around the house singing this song out of tune, and then I used to finish it off with "Daz Wash is Whiter" because I thought that was part of the Peter and Gordon song. Can't live.
Your mother ruined your career as a future rock star?
Well, I don't think I had a career as a rock star unless it was like smashing rocks. It was never going to be singing. I don't have a singing voice. I try, but I'm pushing the boundaries of limitations and how life perceived and how life turned out. But my mum used to get really, really annoyed with me, and I used to get annoyed as well regarding. There used to be this guy every day used to turn up at the house, and I thought he was having an affair with my mum. So I found these balloons upstairs, and I used to turn around and think I needed to do something to get rid of this guy because he kept coming around every day around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then he would move on. And I thought my mum was having an affair, or she had another man coming round to the house. Or my mum was selling me to this man because I was annoying her so much over this Peter and Gordon. Anyway, it transpires that I was filling up these balloons and throwing them out the window at this guy, And this guy was then turning around and getting annoyed, so I was upsetting my mum, I was upsetting the man. But I didn't realise that the man was really upset because they weren't balloons, they were my father's condoms. That was my father's birth control process. And I was throwing condoms out the window, and the guy wasn't there to buy me or to turn around and have an affair with my mum. He was the postman. He was delivering the mail every day. And
imagine what he was thinking.
yeah, this little oik was upstairs feeling the right pain in the arse, which was me. But there we go. So anyway, it's yeah, life.
Yeah. We spent 2 years in Washington, and my father's next station was Westover Air Force Base, Springfield, Massachusetts. Another SAC bomber tanker base, not known for anything other than they had a command bunker built into the side of a mountain nearby, kind of like Colorado Springs, in case of nuclear war.
Okay, so everybody could hide.
Yeah, well, not everybody.
Oh.
Just the big cheese at the base.
Yeah.
That was it. The rest of the state of Massachusetts might have been a wasteland, but hey, the generals survived.
Yeah. Is it the general that actually goes into war, or is it the infantryman? No, it's the infantryman, I think. The generals just create wars like politicians.
Kind of like the what was that Aussie band that did the song "It's a Mistake"? It was about nuclear war. Men at Work. That was
Men at Work.
Men at Work, the Aussie band.
Yeah.
Yeah, It's a Mistake. Anyways, I have quite a few memories from living, because we moved off base. I now had a younger brother and sister, and we lived in a little town called Granby next to a lake, which for a kid was fantastic. We used to go ice skating in winter when it was frozen. I remember my brother fell through the ice. I did a dramatic shimmy on your stomach to get out there and save him, pull him out of the water.
Well, what's that? Is that to spread the weight so you don't fall through yourself?
So you don't fall through.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right?
Oh.
I guess I learned how to do that. I don't know.
Well, we get ice in the UK on lakes, but it's only about a quarter of an inch thick. You can't go ice skating. It doesn't get cold enough.
And I was in the Boy Scouts too, so we had a lot of adventures. Summer camp. Spent a couple weeks in the wooded part of the state at summer camp. Great for a boy, right? You could paddle in the lake in canoes. You could swim. You could go out in the woods hiking. It was great.
It's a big adventure, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But it had a bad ending because I got kicked out of the Boy Scouts.
Oh.
You
were too old.
No. me and a couple other guys we thought it was boring. Especially every week when you had to go to the meetings and you'd sit around and the adults would all talk and this and that. So one night we went out and the three of us started harassing the farmers' cows next door to the building where we were having the meeting. And all three of us got caught. For some odd reason, we thought it was funny to piss on the cows. I don't know why. So we all got caught pissing on the farmers' cows and got kicked out.
Oh. All three of you got kicked out of the Boy Scouts.
I was also, my father was heavily promoting sports. And he thought, this is a perfect opportunity to teach my boy, since he's going to be rowdy in the Boy Scouts, maybe he needs to put his energy into sports. So he put me on a baseball team. I actually became pretty good at it. We ended up winning our division. Our team got picked for the Little League playoffs. In the U.S., they have baseball Little League World Series, where the two best teams in the country end up in a playoff.
Okay.
But you have to get there eventually, right?
Yeah.
So they have playoffs in each state, and we ended up in the playoff between Western Mass and Eastern Mass. We lost. Otherwise, we would have gone to the World Series and had a playoff there. And I recall, and I believe my parents still have it. The local newspaper came around and took a picture of the team, put it in the newspaper, and I cut it out and saved it.
Oh,
so somewhere I have a picture of me at about 9 or 10 years old in a baseball uniform with a whole team around with, Western Division All-Stars on the uniform.
Well, for me, I didn't get into baseball. We had football in the UK, and I used to do goalie, and I was fairly good at that. I thought I was fairly good at that. I also used to do judo, which I really, really enjoyed, and that was a bit like yourself. The hut for doing judo was in the woods, so you have to go into the forest to turn around and go through these old Second World War huts. They'd converted them into education areas for like knitting and WI and doing judo and archery and stuff like that. And I started doing judo, which was pretty good. I enjoyed that, and then I continued doing football. I used to have a best friend, a guy called Garry, and we went fishing one day up at the lake, because we were talking about the lake. We had a lake just up the road, and that just about 200 yards from my house where I lived, and it was really, really, really good. We used to enjoy that, and my dad bought me a new fishing rod. Well, I think it was a new fishing rod, but I was actually, I didn't know nothing about fishing, and I caught this fish, and the fish decided that it didn't want to come with me, so it decided to take me into the lake. And I always remember this because my dad turned around and said, "Look, don't fall in, whatever you do, don't fall in." And I fell in. So my father...
must have been a hell of a big fish.
Yeah.
A shark.
It was a tench, 5-pound tench or something. And one of the guys next to me caught the fish for me, but I'd fallen in, and my penance was to walk home from the lake to my house with no clothes on. So my father thought that was a good idea. Draconian methods of teaching children or growing up in the UK back in the 60s was a lot to be desired.
Around naked.
Yeah, a lot to be desired. So Karen, my first crush, was no longer my first crush after that walk back from the lake.
That bad, huh?
That bad. So I think it had something to do with the bait that I was using.
The bait. I'll bet it was the bait.
Yeah. So that was my excursion into sports. So I continued to like fishing, but and I became fairly good at it, but not as good as some of these other people where they become fanatical about going through the night and laying out their swims with all the balls and all of the different ground baits to turn around and get all the fish to come into their swim so they can hook them quicker.
Lures.
Yeah, I just used to turn up and sit there and enjoy the countryside, enjoy the ambience, enjoy what this planet has to offer. So consequently, the lake is now a resort park. The local public can't go in there because it's open to people that want to spend, £1,000 a week on some accommodation.
Well, now it makes money. Right?
Yeah, that's
Before,
it.
With you, it didn't make any money.
No, and that was it. But it gave me an education in life. So,
but going back to what Gary mentioned just previously, this is when I was also introduced to music. I remember a neighborhood kid. Him and I used to play together a lot. His older brother, Danny, I remember Danny, one day showed us a brand new record album that he bought. I think Danny was probably 14, 15 years old, and he had a record player, of course. And this So this would have been around 64, maybe 65. I think 64. And it was Meet the Beatles. The Beatles first. The Beatles.
The Beatles, not the Bugs.
I heard that record, and I think at that moment my life changed. Right, rock and roll. Here we had it. Of course, I was only maybe 11 years old, but I Want to Hold Your Hand suddenly was all over AM radio. Everywhere you went. I ended up buying a little tiny pocket AM radio. You put batteries in it and you could tune it to an AM radio station. And I Want to Hold Your Hand, what I didn't think was that particularly that great of a song. When I listened to the album at Danny's house, the two songs I liked were All I've Got to Do, which I believe is a John Lennon song.
Okay, yeah.
And All My Lovin'.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my lovin'.
Which I think was a Paul McCartney tune.
Oh, my lovin'.
That's it. Yeah.
I will be with you. I'm really wrecking these songs.
So now, for the next 2 or 3 years, my life would revolve around rock and roll and music.
Oh, well, I remember this television program, and it was Cracker Jack, I think it was, and this guy was announcing that there was going to be this record come out, and it was going to be played by the Animals, and it was a massive hit. But I didn't realise that it was sung by people. I thought it was actually sung by animals. So I was listening to this record, The House of the Rising Sun, for 2 or 3 years, thinking that the singers were animals from the forest. And I'd convinced myself it was things like squirrels and bears, and all of these different animals were actually making this music so good. And I used to hum this record. I couldn't sing it, and it was only 3 or 4 years later that I found out it was by a guy called Eric Burdon from the Animals, and the song was about prostitution in New Orleans.
House of the Rising Sun.
It
was a prostitution house.
There we go. So I really, I didn't get music at that time. I liked the tunes and I liked the melodies and but I was 6, 7, 8, 9, and these things were changing my life a bit like yourself.
Yeah.
The Beatles changed your life. I can't remember ever being into the Beatles back in my country, back in the UK, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was things like Peter and Gordon, it was the Animals.
Well, the Beatles woke up America. When they made music and it was played in America, suddenly it went from Elvis Presley to the Beatles. Okay. They were huge. And of course, they brought along, after the Beatles, immediately became what was called the British Invasion, which brought in all the Rolling Stones,
the
Yardbirds, on and on. All these British bands suddenly showed up on AM radio playing rock and roll.
And now they're still going, some of them.
Sure they are.
Some of them have passed away.
I just watched an interview with Jimmy Page.
Okay, Led Zeppelin.
Yes, he started in the Yardbirds, and then formed Led Zeppelin. But he's still around. I don't know when the last time Led Zeppelin ever played together, but they were a huge band. But of course, that was the early 70s.
Yeah. Well, I was reading an article yesterday about the guy that shot John Lennon. His parole has been squashed for the 11th time now.
I saw that.
Yeah. So
Mark David Chapman.
Mark Chapman. Yeah. 6 hours before John Lennon, he turned around and got his autograph, and then 6 hours later, he went back and shot him. Well, there we go. What a nice guy. Yeah, he should stay where he is. Really. Seek forgiveness? Yes, I think so.
Those crazy Yanks.
Yeah, there we go.
Taking revenge on the Brits.
Well, there's more Americans. I think, what was it, Janis Joplin? I think she died in London, didn't she? Jimi Hendrix died in London.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, Jimi Hendrix,
Liza Minnelli,
which I'm going to talk about next week. Jimi Hendrix actually became famous, not in America, but in London first. Then he came back to the States and was a big star.
Yeah.
But he originally became famous because the other British bands would go watch him play in clubs in London.
Yeah.
And they just went, wow, this guy.
He was left-handed, wasn't he? So,
Yeah,
and
he
and he played the guitar upside down.
Yeah, he played a right-handed guitar, left-handed.
Yeah. Bizarre.
Besides setting it on fire, too.
There was life. Okay, guys, so